But I'm really happy now because I get to interview a friend and somebody I look up to as well. But separate from all that, I'm interviewing the guy that is responsible for a lot of music that has come out, a lot of specific types of music. And we're going to talk more about that with a friend. And like I say, he's the guy behind Ponk Media, and he's located in Ohio. We're going to bring him on the line right now. Mark, how are you tonight, bro?
Hey, hello there, Reverend Sister. Thank you for having me on. And hello to all the listeners.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to have you here. I love your logo. Just quickly, what does Ponk Media mean for those that don't know?
Oh, well, it's, an annoying little insect that kind of, it's an Indian term for this annoying little insect that would upset people when they're sleeping and eating and whatnot, and cattle and whatnot. And, very small little thing that annoyed people. And I thought it was kind of interesting to... they called it Ponk. It translates into living ashes.
I love it.
I thought that was interesting for the characters that I, did these recordings with.
We're going to talk tonight primarily about the GG Allin Carnival of Excess experience and the album and recordings. But just to let the folks know, Mark has really collected a vast array of very eccentric, in a good way, and of really legit musical icons and people that I love, actually. Literally. Nervous Norvus is somebody, even as a kid, I was obsessed with that Transfusion song, okay? I grew up obsessed with rockabilly music. You had Sleepy LaBeef. And then, of course, we are both mutual friends of the late, great GG Allin. And it's just Tiny Tim, another mutual friend of ours. And it's just like, really? So when I discovered Ponk, I'm like, this is a record label after my own heart.
Well, I'm glad you found it. But yeah, those are each individual person. I tried to take each one of those guys and kind of take them out of their element. So with, Nervous, of course, was past. That's a different story. But I mean, with Tiny, Sleepy, and Gigi, each one of those recording sessions were unique in that, Gigi was country, Sleepy was all acoustic, or for the most part, it wasn't just a studio band.
Yeah.
And then Tiny was no ukulele. That was recorded live. With an orchestra, 2 songs a night live at a soundstage, because we wanted to keep the integrity of how those songs were recorded in the first place. So each one was challenging, not only, from the execution of it, but to get the artist to kind of, I don't want to say buy in, but you know what I mean.
I do. And, just to your credit, Tiny Tim was on record as saying that the album he did with you, Prisoner of Love, was the best thing he'd ever done in his career.
Well, that's a nice compliment from Tiny. I know he was really excited doing that, because Russ Columbo was, one of his icons, one of his favorite crooners. So he was excited that, he was able to do something that he always wanted to do, but I guess never really had the space to do it in. And, it was kind of the same with Gigi,
And so, skipping ahead, because we've already discussed doing a part 2, which we will certainly do, and then we'll delve into the other stories. But speaking of Gigi, he's a guy that you go on YouTube. He's got millions and millions of hits on his stuff. He's become just a legend for so many reasons, to so many different people, and it's just very vast, which is kind of cool. It's kind of what Ponk represents too. Is like this. It's a colorful expansion of freedom. It's revolutionary, and it's a celebration of something unique but yet totally real. And you were able to get him down from the Murder Junkies sort of pedestal of what he was doing, that rapid fire live stuff, and strip him down to what he liked most. That he loved Jerry Lee Lewis, he loved Hank Williams Jr., he loved country music in general, like we all do, the good stuff. And you got him to come and make an album of that stuff. And to this day, it's this talk of the town, kind of, because he didn't die with just this scum you know what I'm saying, reputation. How did it come about in a nutshell? How was it perfected? How did you make this orchestrate?
Well, I guess when I first got into Gigi, and I won't bore your listeners with all the backstories of this, but I found his acoustic stuff to be some of his most powerful. In particular, like Darkness and a Bottle of Hold, When I Die, Liquor Slick Highway, that kind of stuff. The Troubled Troubadour EP. And I just thought, wow, there's some real power just behind that, that raw, stripped down energy of what he brought. Because my interest with Gigi was always about the, quote, artist, if you will, but I wanted to get to the person, the artist, and also the, musician. I wasn't really I was, the shock stuff really didn't interest me as much. I was more interested in the music, and and Gigi and I had a lot of conversations about that, and he I guess ended up trusting me because we had worked on several other projects before Carnival, and we finally met in person the weekend he was in North Carolina doing vocals for the Anti-Scene album. Jeff Clayton was gracious enough to let me kind of invade that weekend.
Yeah,
and,
cheers to Jeff Clayton. I love that guy.
Yes, awesome. Awesome, dude. And we ended up doing the photo shoot, and then I interviewed him a lot that weekend and whatnot. But that's when we first kind of came up with the idea for Carnival. I took him aside away from everybody, and we just kind of talked about the book we were working on at the time called The Ann Arbor Incident. And then
so you're working on that book now?
No, that was before.
Okay.
That was how one of the projects that Gigi and I were involved in, but it kind of worked its way into what became Carnival of Excess, because that's one of the reasons I was in North Carolina, was to talk some business about that, give him the rough transcript, and whatnot. But whatever. I asked him about doing a whole acoustic record. And at the time, I had been listening to the Johnny Thunders Hurt Me acoustic record.
Ah, yeah.
And I wanted to kind of do something in between the lo-fi and the real hi-fi, somewhere in the middle, you know what I mean? But do a full album of it with Gigi, because, again, he was powerful there. At least I thought.
Yeah, he was.
So, he got back to Ann Arbor and whatnot, and then, we started talking a little more, and he said, listen, what about if we, kind of made this more of a pumped up country thing, do you think you can get some guys together to do that, blah, blah, blah. I said, sure. I sought out the help of Bob Widenhofer, who actually wrote the music, and Paul Reller agreed to work on it, who also is the one who conducted and basically scripted the whole Tiny Tim album as well. Absolute genius, Paul is. So it just kind of worked out that way, and one thing led to the next, and we agreed to come to Tampa, and I set up an in-store, and we did a lot of work that week in Tampa, when he came to do the album. So I don't know if there's another question you want me to keep rambling on. I don't want to bore your listeners.
No, that's kind of a good place I want to ask you about that. How'd the in-store go? That was in Tampa itself?
Yeah, that was a place called Alternative Records. And again, Gigi came down for a week, and so I lined stuff up, interviews and in-stores and recording sessions and all the rest of it. Thinking, okay, well, I got to keep Gigi busy, because we both know what happens when Gigi gets bored. So, and Gigi was a very hard worker when he had a goal, and the goal was to make Carnival. And we had talked about how different and unique this was going to be. But the in-store itself, which is actually on YouTube, it went great. There was a lot of fun little moments in that. That's where he got that big blotch on his head. Somebody offered him $20 for him to bleed on the records or whatever, so he gladly took the money and started smacking his head on the counter.
I never heard that one.
What's that?
I had never heard that story.
Yeah, it was pretty funny, but you know how Gigi was. He was wacky like that sometimes.
Did he have a nice turnout at the record store signing?
Oh yeah. We sold out everything. The place was packed, and
that is so awesome.
It was really the whole 2 hours. There wasn't a dull moment.
Well, Mark, a lot of people.
Wait. If I may say, the cool thing about all that is we took a limo on the way there, because we had been drinking a lot the week he was there, and we were just like, you know what, we gotta all just kick in and just take a limo ride there. That's where some of that footage comes from, that people may have seen, of us in the limo together and whatnot.
That is so cool.
Yeah, we just figured, what the heck, why not? And we drank the whole way there too, so we were kind of buzzed up when we were doing that. But
well, and now we know.
There you go.
You know, a lot of folks really, really love his version of Warren Zevon's Carmelita. Was that his idea or your idea?
No, that was his idea, and he had sent me a tape of, actually, he had sent me a tape of the Linda Ronstadt version, and that's what we kind of all went by. So if you listen to that,
I know that version well.
Versions.
Yeah, I know her version the best, I think.
I'm sorry?
I know her version the best, I think.
Yeah, and like if you listen to all three, Zevon's, Linda's, and then Gigi's patterns, Linda Ronstadt's, because that's the template that he kind of went by. And whatnot. He really liked her version of that song.
It's getting hard to hear you. I'm not sure if you're moving around or if there's just a bad connection, but it's like I can hear you good, and then it kind of goes in and out.
I'm sorry. How about right now?
Sounds really good, Mark, right there, actually.
Okay, I apologize.
Oh, no sweat, bro.
I pace. But anyways,
I know the feeling. I do the same.
Carmelita ended up being used in the Showtime, the Californication series, and also it was on the soundtrack from that album. And it's kind of funny because Gigi and I talked about that. I went and visited him in prison once, and we talked about something like that happening to one of those songs because they were so different and unique, and they didn't contain swear words, and they were well done and whatnot. That done in actual studio, and we thought it was either going to be Carmelita or Outskirts of Life, but I guess Carmelita.
Well, I love that scene where David Duchovny's in the swimming pool and he's just laying in that little thing floating, and you can hear Carmelita in the background. It's just perfect, like you said, man. It would just fit so well.
Oh, yeah, they did a really nice job with the whole scene and using that with the little girl singing and everything. It was really amazing.
That's something he would have been super proud of for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I want to clear something up while I've got you on the line, and I don't want to delve into it any more than just on the surface. But I just want to say I knew this man since '83. You knew him all those years. You knew him up until his death. And, there's a lot of speculation and rumors that he was a drug addict. And, it's just not true. He was a user, and he was a binger, and he would probably do a little of anything at just about any time. But he was not a guy he was never an addict that I knew of. I'd never, ever did drugs or saw him do drugs in the 10 years we were friends. And people think, he went to prison and he had to suffer. And I just don't think he was that kind of an addict. I think he was more of just a binging kind of guy. And I think you and I had talked about this, but I don't think it's fair that people say, Gigi was a junkie and this and that. Nah, I don't think so, man. He was a user, yes. But he just doesn't deserve to have that reputation of someone that was all he was this druggy guy. I don't think so. I think he was more into music than any people really realize, not just like substances and things,
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Now, I can't comment specifically on what his habits were or were not, but I can say that the whole time I knew him, worked with him, and whatnot, the hard drugs thing never entered the picture at all.
Yep.
It just wasn't. I mean, when he was at my place in Tampa, we certainly drank. We drank the river dry, but
Yeah. And that is drugs. I understand, but I'm just saying that people are like assuming because of how he died or whatever, and it's just not fair. He wasn't like that. He was just a kind of a Keith Moon guy. I'll do something here and there if I want to, but I don't think he was ever quite addicted to anything except maybe the booze, perhaps. But
yeah, no, I agree. From everything I knew and about him, and my experience with him echoed that exactly.
It's amazing, too, that you ended up releasing records, with G, and he was a Tiny Tim fan as well. That's so neat how that intersects, man.
Well, I wish I would have known that, knew those guys when they were both alive together.
My God.
It didn't work out that way because I've always one of the things I always like to say is I would have loved to put those two in the studio together.
Oh my gosh.
People say I would be crazy, and I said, well, people thought I was crazy back then for doing this with Gigi, so nothing new. Back in because back then there wasn't this whole country thing. It was just the stuff we were listening to. That we all were back then. Johnny Cash, David Allan Coe, Merle Haggard, and Gigi also liked, Flat and Scruggs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know, too, he had a sense of humor, and a lot of the early Scum F's album, the Scum F's EMF album has 2 or 3 songs that if you were a fan of Mad Magazine, you would get these little flexi discs that came with the magazine, and they had a song on there called She Has No Job, She Had a Nose Job, dun, dun, dun. Of course, he changed it to Blow, you know what, and lots of his songs were based on humor, and a lot of folks, it's kind of goes out the door because of his antics that overshadowed a lot of some of the musical stuff and the humor stuff, too. But God bless him for doing so much of that, like vast array from novelty to country to rock to just, he kept it real, that's for sure.
My point of working with GG again was to, we all, we talked about a lot, him dying, and we knew how special Carnival was, and he knew it. That's why even on those things, he says how proud he was of it. It was the first time, I was the first person to kind of get, I guess, maybe, get GG to do some female backup vocals, and that whole thing with the acoustics sessions happened, that led to Razor doing the backing vocals for Carmelita and all that, and it was just interesting how it all kind of came together. But Gigi knew how he loved that record, because it was kind of when it came out, it was like, holy smokes, this is what I had in mind.
How long did it take for you guys to do all those recordings? Like, how much time would you say?
Well, we did the actually, it was funny because we went there and we met up with the musicians in the studio, and Gigi walked in and he saw the accordion and the piano, and he just flipped out. And I said, oh my gosh, he was like, there's no way this is going to be in a GG Allin album, and blah blah blah, and stormed out. And I had to go grab a 12-pack, and I took him to a space, and we hashed it out, and I got him back in there, and that's when he met the guys. So
awesome,
they did the music that night, and then we came back a couple days later and did the vocals for it and everything. But in between that, we did that acoustic stuff, which is where Razor did the backing vocals, and if you want me to talk a little bit about that, I can, because that acoustic stuff I think is pretty special.
Well, that's what we're going to play as soon as we were getting ready to wrap up our first chat with you, but we're going to do Carmelita because we've been playing the other version for a long time on this show, like regularly for years, actually. But tonight, I'm going to, for the first time, play the acoustic version from the Bleeding, Stinking, and Drinking EP that you so kindly sent me. And, I want to, it's got a really neat acoustic version of Warren Zevon's Carmelita, and that could be worthy of playing.
Yeah, and that's been released actually. I don't know, that Bleeding, Stinking, and Drinking thing actually came out cassette and has been released. With the acoustic stuff has also been released on another EP called Uncool, Unclean, and Unplugged. But yeah, it's all, again, I love the acoustic. His acoustic stuff was great. They did there's another tune called Pick Me Up on Your Way Down, which Patsy Cline made famous, that him and Razor sing together. It's just fantastic.
Well, it's nice. You have a little interview at the end as well, and you got No Rights on there, and Borrowed Time, and This Room, which is another take on his Sitting in This Room, which is another classic. I mean, it's almost an hour, this thing here, so it's not really an EP. It's really just a really cool LP that's really just a lot of folks don't even really know, maybe don't know, but it's the photos are taken from Tampa, Florida, 1991. It's just a really excellent packaging, too, man. None of your stuff is anything but stellar as far as professional looking too, man. Like, good stuff.
Oh, well. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, dude.
But Carmelita was one of those things that it was interesting. One day we were sitting around, it was in the evening, and how all this acoustic stuff just, it was me, Gigi, and Razor sitting around, and he just picked up the guitar, walked in the bathroom, and I was like, this is interesting. And they had kind of semi-nice acoustic, so I just figured, what the heck, I set up a video camera, and, he didn't seem to care. And you know how Gigi was. If he didn't want you doing it, you just didn't do it, or the consequences are yours. And but he didn't have an issue, and and then I just said, hey, Razor, jump in the in the bathtub and sing along with him. And it just kind of one of those things that worked, and they did, I think, 3 songs, and Carmelita was one of them. So that's what gave the inspiration then to have her do the backing vocals in the studio.
Awesome. Yeah, well, if people want to find you, I know you're on Instagram at Ponk Media, and are there any other people, where can they find you besides Instagram?
Yeah, on YouTube at Ponk Media, and if you want to check out, I give away for free the whole Carnival of Excess full movie. It's kind of like a little 75-minute documentary I did, doing little videos of each one of the songs, and then just a lot of the interview footage I did with him in North Carolina and also Tampa. It's kind of cool. So yeah, both Instagram and YouTube at Ponk Media.
Perfect.
Ponk.
Yeah, people do sometimes misunderstand me. It is Ponk. Mark Robinson, thank you a million. We'll do part 2 as soon as we can schedule it. I look forward to picking up kind of where we left off and expand a little more on this, and then morph our way into the Tiny and the other stories.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate you having me on. And again, hello to all listeners, and y'all have a good night. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, man, for being here. And I look forward to the next time you're on the show, because just sitting here listening to you two talk has been great. So can't wait to have you back on.
Well, I can't wait to be back on. The pleasure will be all mine. Thank you for having me, and anytime to be back to discuss the other folks.
Rock and roll. It's Carmelita. This is from the acoustic version, not the one we normally play that we get so many compliments over. But this is GG Allin, Carmelita, Ponk Media, right here at the Almighty Church of Rock and
KSKQ.
Woo-hoo.